video, I am walking you through how to do standing pigeon toed at the wall. All you need is a narrow sliver of wall, a doorway, a French window, something like that. This exercise is very much testing our foot function and the ability of our hips to extend. So hip extension is the opposite of what's happening whilst you're in a chair. When you're in a chair, you're in hip flexion. I'm in hip flexion right now, but when I stand up, I am in hip extensions. This exercise is really aiming to stretch those off. Okay, so what we're going to do to start with is we're going to bring our ankles and our butt cheek back against the wall. So I have my ankles, my calves and my butt cheek back against the wall. I am not overly focusing on my upper body. So I'll talk about this first actually before we go any further with the feet. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when they do standing exercises like this is that they become too preoccupied with their head position and their shoulder position. So lots of people will do this and they'll fling their arms back against the wall, and it's almost like they're like bracing their upper body back against the wall to help keep themselves upright. I don't want you doing that, because if you're focusing on trying to get your head, your shoulders and your arms backwards, what you're doing in order to put yourself there is you're flaring your rib cage up, which is shortening your lower back, and that's going to keep you compressed through your hips. So your hip flexors attach at the bottom of your rib cage. They go through all your organs here and down into your groin. If you're standing in a rib cage flare, you are going to prohibit your hips from extending, which is what we want from this exercise. So the angle of your rib cage is crucial when it comes to teaching your hips extension. And therefore, the reason that your body doesn't want you to do this in the way that I want you to do it is because when you're standing naturally, you're going to feel really hunchback. So I hear from people all the time, but Ellie, when I do the exercise the way that you tell me, my head is really far forwards, my shoulders are really far forwards, my arms are really far forwards, I am standing with bad posture. You're not standing with bad posture, you're standing with your body's natural posture when you aren't compensating through your rib cage. So compensating through your rib cage to have your upper body upright, that isn't good posture, that's cheating posture. You are cheating with your rib cage to trick your mind into thinking that your head and your shoulders are back and down behind you, but by doing that, you're preventing your hips from moving properly, which is the purpose of this exercise. So I'm going to say it again, and I'm sure I'll get comments about it because I always do. But yes, I want you to stand here with a relaxed, slumpy head and shoulder position. So just to clarify, I am standing a bit like this with my head and my shoulders away from the wall because I don't want to lift my rib cage up. I want my rib cage down because this is a hip exercise. I don't care if you feel hunchback. It means you're doing it properly and you're not cheating with your rib cage. So hopefully that's cleared things up. We're not like this. We relax the rib cage. We allow the head and the shoulders and the arms to fall forwards. The beauty of this exercise is that over time, you are going to notice that everything starts to magically pull itself into place without you having to crank yourself there. We're going to turn our feet pigeon-toed. So my ankles are at the wall and my feet are turning pigeon-toed. You're not in a competition here to be in the world's most pigeon-toed position, and the degree at how pigeon-toed you go will in part depend on things like what your knees are telling you. So if you already have quite like internally rotated knees, twisting your feet here more internal might make your knees feel worse. So if that's the case, you're just going to reduce the amount of internal rotation you're asking of your feet. You can still go a little bit more pigeon-toed, but you just don't have to go pigeon-toed like that, because that's going to be much more likely to cause you sort of strain on the joints. So just find an angle at your feet where it feels a bit weird, it feels a bit different, but you're not causing yourself any joint pain by doing so. As soon as you do this internal rotation of the feet, you might really feel how your sort of pelvis is pulling away from the wall and your upper body might be sort of wobbling around. And that is the purpose of this exercise. We are using a new position at your feet to challenge the whole of your body. So we're using this position of the feet to really ground into our feet, which is going to pull our hips down into extension, which is going to balance our pelvis and hopefully free up our upper body without us having to pin back against the wall like that, okay? So think of this as a foot exercise. It is a foot-driven exercise, therefore your feet are the most important part of it. We're going to slightly soften our knees here. And the reason that I'm doing that is I want you to think about your weight distribution in your feet. Some of you, whilst you're here, you're going to pin your knees real backwards. You're going to really push them backwards into hyperextension. And you'll feel like all of your weight in your feet is in the kind of back half of your feet, which I don't want. I want it to be that you feel like you're really grounded and engaged through your big toe joints. So what I recommend is soft bend in your knees to start with. You're going to roll the inner edges of your feet down towards the floor. So you're like flattening the arches of your feet, but without lifting up the outer edges of your feet. You're really, really pinning into your big toe joints here. And you'll feel how when you've got a soft bend at your knee and you're really rolling into the inner edges of the feet and pinning down with the big toe joints, you'll feel how you've then got more weight through the front edges of your feet, through the balls of your feet. That's great. That's exactly what we want. So what your job is now is to figure out, how do I slightly straighten my knees without changing how my feet feel right now? So if you just push those knees backwards into hyperextension, you're going to lose that sense that you've got weight through the front of your feet, which is what I want. So what we're going to do is keep a little bit of a softness in our knees, really focus on grounding into the inner edges of the feet, rolling into the big toe joints. And then what we're going to do is our quad muscles, these muscles here along the front edges of our thighs, we're going to squeeze our quads using our brain. And what we are not doing with our quads is using them to shove our knees backwards against the wall. We're using the quads to feel like we're lifting the kneecaps upwards, but we are still trying to find that point on our feet where we're rolling the inner edges of the feet downwards and really pushing into the big toe joints. So for me right now, I'm somebody who normally hyperextends my knees. I kind of buckle backwards as a compensation. I do not have my calves quite at the wall anymore, because if I have my calves at the wall, I put this into my sort of bones and my joints and I take the work out of my muscles. I want this to be a muscular exercise. So I'm keeping a soft bend, really drilling in through the inner edges of both of my feet, squeezing my quads to lift my kneecaps and to slightly straighten my knees, but my focus is very much on the grounding down in my feet and not losing that connection and work that is happening in my feet. My belly stays relaxed, my hands and my arms and my shoulders stay relaxed, and I'm changing the angle of my rib cage slightly, just so that I feel the bottom of my rib cage touching the wall. So again, I don't want the lifting of the rib cage to keep you here. I want the bottom of the rib cage at the wall, even though that might make you feel like your hands and your arms are coming too far forwards. I'm standing here, and because I'm not buckling backwards in my knees, and because I'm really focusing on what my feet are doing and trying to roll them in and pin in with my big toe joints, I'm getting all sorts of stuff starting to happen around my calves, in the arches of my feet. I'm getting a bit of a wobble through that right hand side, trying to remind myself about squeezing my quads. But in a way, the quads are less important than what your feet are doing. Remember, this is a foot-driven exercise, creating change through the whole of your body. I want you focusing on your feet, your ankles, and your calves and your shins as your priority, because this is where the exercise is starting from. So if focusing on your quads is like too much, or if focusing on your quads means that you buckle the knees backwards into hyperextension, just keep that little bit of softness there at your knees and really just focus on your feet. Because soon enough, I promise you, if you're anything like me, I'm cramping in that right calf right now. You're going to start feeling all sorts of stuff happening in your lower body. My feet have gone purple. My feet have gone veiny. So if your feet go like a really weird color, or if strange things happen to them, that's great. It means that you're changing the blood flow. You're changing that muscular stimulation to your foot. So I have got Not that much really happening in my left-hand side, but my right hip is tighter. So my right hip is tight and it's trying to pull me away from the wall here. So the action of just keeping my butt cheeks at the wall, even though my calves are not yet at the wall, is really forcing my right lower leg to have to like stabilize and work hard. I'm getting like a traveling cramp, traveling through that right leg. And if I was to stand here for long enough, I know, because I've done this lots of times before, that both of my legs start wobbling like this, and it creates these like whole body convulsions for me, and that is exactly what we're going after. So when we're new to this exercise, for a while, it will probably be that you only feel things in your lower legs because your lower legs need to kind of rearrange themselves and become more functional. But as they become more functional and rearrange themselves, that will be the point where your hips start letting go into extension, the pelvis starts balancing, and after you've had like these wobbles and stuff that will start happening, you will just notice, as if by magic, and without you having to force yourself there, you're going to notice that your arms and your shoulders and your head just start peeling back into that position that you want to go in. But it will happen naturally. It will be like these strings in your body are just like gently pulling you back to where they should be. Those strings, by the way, are muscles becoming more functional, rather than you having to force yourself there and flare the rib cage. Keep the rib cage down, slumpy upper body, really feeling into those lower legs. And if the legs start to feel like there's not much happening, if you start to feel like you're getting knee pain, you're probably buckling backwards in your knees to avoid the footwork. So soften the knees slightly, roll into the inner edges of the feet, pin into the big toes, and just feel that development of work over time. Once you understand what it is that you're feeling for there, that's when you can combine with the quad squeeze, and you're trying to sort of gently lift the kneecaps to straighten the knees, but not lose that focus down onto the foot, okay? So the foot is the most important thing. A final thing here before we go is that just make sure you're not avoiding one of your legs. So this is a great exercise if you are somebody who has an elevated pelvis, or if you avoid loading one of your legs. But you're going to have to be really careful, because if you, for example, like to avoid loading your left leg, if you're not careful, you might just carry on avoiding your left leg and not do the thing that actually your body wants you to do, which is to ground through that left foot. So it might pay to take a video of yourself, or ask somebody else to watch you, or do it in front of a mirror, so that you can really make sure that both of your hips are above both of your feet, and really try and feel into whether or not you have the same amount of weight through both of your feet. Last thing, I did say the other thing was the last thing. I don't know how long this video has been going on for now, but this is a position where, as long as it feels like hard work and your back isn't hurting, your knees aren't hurting, your neck's not hurting or anything like that, as long as there's no joint pain, it just feels like hard work, do this exercise a lot. It's a really easy one to do like during the working day for a few minutes. You can do it whilst watching TV. There are lots of different ways that you can kind of try and bring this exercise into your daily routine, but it is one that I really suggest that you hold for quite a long period of time. So if you've got a spare 15 minutes, 20 minutes, do this exercise, because I mentioned earlier those full body wobbles. It might take that long for them to start to kick in, but when you are regularly getting full body wobbles from this exercise, you are going to feel completely different for it. It's one of the best whole body exercises that I know, and this is one of the exercises that I end up giving to loads of people, because it can just really quite quickly change how the entire body is standing. So I will stop the video now, but this is standing at the wall pigeon toed. I hope you enjoy, and let me know how you find it.